Hey everybody, welcome to the June edition of Coffee with the Chief. And this month we are honored to have with us the current and soon to be outgoing principal of the Otisville Elementary School. He's been a guest before, he's no stranger to us, he's a great friend, Mr. Vincent Biele. And Vinny, I wanted to welcome you. And for anyone that doesn't know you, why don't you just give us a quick intro, because there's always a new listener out there.
Absolutely. So Chief, it's a pleasure to be back here, and thank you for having me. So real quick, I'll give you a little bit of a background about myself. Born in Mount Vernon, grew up in Rockland. I'm one of three boys, the middle child, so that explains a lot about me. I attended Binghamton University for my undergraduate, and then for my master's, which I'm a former special ed teacher, I attended St. Thomas Aquinas, and then for my administrative degree, I attended New Paltz. Married for almost 30 years, have three kids, two of them out of the house, one working with a cybersecurity company in Manhattan, one who's a teacher, my daughter, my middle one, and a 17-year-old that's getting ready to be a senior in high school.
Okay.
And, looking forward to them doing great things too.
So I guess the exciting thing for you, disappointing thing for us, is that you're stepping away, you're retiring this year. So what's behind that? Just got to the point where time is up, and
it was a very difficult decision. I think you could look at all the things that education, even before COVID, all the things that have changed and challenged educators. But even with that, it was a very difficult decision. I think that when anybody talks about retirement, it's a difficult decision, and it really is a family decision. I love this place. I love my job. I love being the leader of Otisville, for being an administrator for 14 years, but also leading this building through many difficult times and many great times as well. But it wasn't a decision I took lightly, and I probably went back and forth many different times about, should I retire, should I not retire? And I just think that you kind of know, and you could probably ask anybody who retires this, when it's time. And as difficult as it is, and as much as I'm going to miss this community and miss the kids and miss the people in this building, it's time to kind of move on. I still feel like I have a lot ahead of me, and I can enjoy retirement, but also, according to my wife, I'll still work.
Yeah, there you go. So where were you a teacher before you became an administrator?
So I started my teaching career in the Thomas C. Giordano Middle School in the Bronx, right across actually from Fordham University. Okay. I taught there for 7 years, and then after that I had a little bit of a career change. I joined the NYPD and did that for almost 5 years, and then came to a crossroad where I kind of had to make a decision where my career will go. Do I go back to teaching? Do I continue my career with the police department? And I decided to go back to teaching, so I was fortunate enough to get a job in Monroe Woodbury as a special ed teacher. Okay. So I resigned from the police department, and I resigned about 2 weeks prior to September 11th.
Wow, so that's crazy.
And then after Monroe Woodbury, I taught there for...
So your first year of teaching would have been September of 2001 then?
Correct.
In Monroe, wow.
Yep.
So that had to be a tough time for you going through that. And where did you work in the city? Where you?
So, yeah, as a police officer, I was in the 4-2 and the 4-3 precincts. Okay. And
those are Bronx precincts?
Both Bronx. 4-2 is close to Yankee Stadium, so I was, close enough to kind of see the stadium, or sometimes got assigned.
It's like Joe Truglia. Do you know Joe? Like he's a Monroe guy. I think that's where he was from. The Douthits, right? Yep. Kevin Douthit, the Monroe guys, but also I think from the 4-2. Yep.
And then the 4-3 was Story Avenue, Westchester Avenue, that area of the Bronx. Okay. Bruckner Expressway. Yeah. A lot of good experience down there, and like I said, a career change. Went back to teaching in Monroe Woodbury, and then decided to become an administrator. Okay. So I went back to school, and it's funny because I love school, and education's important. But I was never like a fan of school, believe it or not. Look where I ended up.
Yeah, working in a school.
Working in a school.
Is leading it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It's the best choice I ever made. But
and it's probably good to have that perspective too for the students and for the faculty. To be like someone that
wasn't a career educator.
Right.
And I would agree with you. I think, look, I think that it allowed me to look from the outside in and from the inside out.
Yeah, sure.
But I went back to New Paltz, got my administrative degree, and then this wonderful district, Vincent Biele, gave me the opportunity to become an assistant principal. So I started in the old building in the summer before we came over to the new building that same September.
So you never actually was the principal with students in the old building?
No. I was there. I started over the summer. I helped Mrs. Ray, who was the principal before me, transition everything over here.
Gotcha.
I did have the pleasure of meeting a lot of the families, and I made it a point, because I was new to even this part of Orange County.
Sure.
I really didn't know a lot of people here, to really be outside and meet the families and meet the community, and which was nice. And then just further those relationships when we came over and transitioned over to the new school. So once we transitioned here, I was the assistant principal for 3 years.
Wow. And that's like night and day. Like, I don't know, most of our listeners and viewers know the Ordersville School, the old Ordersville School, but pretty much like it can probably fit in like the lobby area of this new building. So what a dramatic change from one to the other. Even not even working in it for that long, you probably saw the dramatic change.
I always try to, I'm always into history, but I think it's important when you work in a district to know the history as well. And being part of Otisville, I think it was fortunate that I had the experience of being in that old building, because I saw where the majority of the staff came from and where the majority of the kids came from, because I think at that point it was a K-3 school.
Right, sure.
So I was able to wander around the school, and I remember it having 3 floors. I remember seeing everything packed up in the gym for the transition over to this building. And I really tried to get to know that building and even talk with faculty and staff about that old building, because I think it's important to know the history of not only a school but a district. So it was, knowing that, I think helped me when I transitioned here as an assistant principal.
And there's so much history with that. I mean, that really was the anchor for the village, and even the whole history behind the early 1970s when they finally went from their own village school district to join Minnesink. I mean, it's such a...
Yep.
I mean, a lot of those people have unfortunately passed away, and they're not part of us the community anymore. But there is an interesting history, an interesting connection to that building to this day, where the community members still keep it going as a community center.
Absolutely, and I think that one connection we have, and we just celebrated this the other day, Karen Crogson, who's one of our teachers.
Yeah, sure.
Who has taught over 51 years. She started her career in the Otisville School District.
Gotcha.
I think I'm going to remember this because I know I've said it many times. I believe she started in 1971.
Yeah.
1972 is when the two districts merged.
Gotcha.
So, we have that history connection too. And she's retiring, which we're going to miss her. But we still have, to this day, that connection between the old school and the new school.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So what do you think, would you say, is your most challenging part of your career as a principal? Not as a teacher, but as a principal. Because they're probably different.
You would think that would be an easy answer. And I think that, look, as an administrator, you deal with many different things. You are supervising adults. You're certainly supervising children.
But supervising the adults sometimes is harder than supervising children, just from a management perspective.
Absolutely.
And I get that.
Absolutely.
Not to insult anybody, but...
No, absolutely. You do. And you're supervising, obviously, children, and you're working with parents. We're partners. We don't just educate the children, we do it with our parents. They're our partners, and they're certainly a big part of what we do in the building, and always have been. But, it really isn't the supervision part. It's not, look, with any relationships, you have bumps in the road. But I think what I've tried to, I think the decision-making when it comes to a child has always been the most difficult, because, in a sense, I've always tried to make those decisions based on what would I do if that was my child sitting in front of me. And I think I always wanted to make sure, and nobody's perfect, but you always wanted to make sure that you were making the best decision you could for that child, no matter what. School, certainly academics are important, but, and I say this as a parent too, it's also been our job here, along with the parents, to make sure that, particularly at this age, kids don't know how to interact. They don't have social skills, and particularly with COVID affecting that. It's important, and we've always done that you work on the social emotional component. They have support for what they've gone through. and that you're making sure that they learn how to make good decisions. And I think that's important along with the academics. Basically, I guess to state, way back when I was in school, you're building a good citizen. You're building somebody who's going to be productive in society. And these are really the building blocks. Yes, they learn how to read. Yes, academics are important, but we teach the whole child. So I think always making sure that I'm making the right decision, and certainly you question that. If you don't question your decisions,
Sure.
or don't learn from decisions that maybe weren't great decisions, then you probably shouldn't be in this job. But I think
how much has it evolved over even your 14 years as an administrator? I mean, listen, I went to school. I had the Felician sisters teach us, so they certainly had a different approach to education or discipline and learning, and then I'm sure goes on today, because
Right.
we would be called up here when because I remember. Sister Clara Mary, smacking people.
Yeah, we don't do that.
And I know that doesn't happen. So how, and that's an evolution too. In Catholic education, right? I don't think they do that even there anymore. But how has it evolved just since you've been a principal and this assistant principal?
I think that I don't know if I would say it evolved, but certainly the priority, my job, and the top priority, like yours, for the public, is safety. And you always want to make sure when kids come to school they feel safe, they feel valued, they feel supported, and as well as their parents. And I think over time we've certainly had to do that more. And I think that COVID has had that impact, where because it's had a negative effect on kids weren't in school. Our families were challenged. Our families couldn't work. They were challenged economically, challenged in general. My opinion, as a parent, kids belong in school.
We made a mistake with that.
I think that...
I think the intentions were good.
Yes.
But looking back, I think we're going to, in hindsight, say that was really a major blunder.
Technology is wonderful, but technology, we know, and we know as a parent, it's a double-edged sword. When we hand our child a cell phone, are they going to make good choices or are they not? We can guide them through that, but we kind of know the answer to that. There's good things about technology, and there's things that are going to have an impact on a child. And yes, the intentions were good, and I think we did the best we could under a very difficult circumstance.
I agree with you.
Unprecedented circumstances. Right, sure. So I think that, given that, not having him in school, an experience no generation has ever had.
And the uncertainty. I mean, we
Yes.
went home they said, hey, we're going to be off for a week or something, and that was early April. And then it just kind of was extended. And I remember even my wife, who's a school teacher, saying, what week you think we're going back? I'm like, listen, I was just on a conference call with emergency management. You're not going back. What? We're not going. And so I think that unknown was out there as well.
Yes, I think even when...
Which is unsettling for a lot of people.
No, absolutely. I think, look, you couldn't plan, and then you had the unintended consequences of having to do what we did.
And you weren't ready for it.
No, I think, look, I remember...
That first few months was very difficult.
Right.
You got better. I'm not saying you, but right. I mean, the schools got better by September.
Right, and I think that, look, like anything else, you learn, and
sure.
Sometimes you're forced to learn. And yes, I agree. I think that we did, and I think that we were able to evolve. So, God forbid that happens again, or, things heat up in September, we're prepared. But like anything else, it's a learning curve. You figure out what works and what doesn't work. But the pandemic itself was a great challenge, and I think that going back to what you were saying about changes, I think that our priority has been really to support our children and support our parents because they haven't been here. I had kids that never knew what it was like to come here without wearing a mask or having more than one child in a bathroom, whatever it may be. They didn't know how the school normally functioned.
Do you think you read so-called experts talk about this, or pundits on TV. Do you think we're 2 years, did we lose 2 years for our kids? Are we going to, 10 years down the line say to these kids that are now seniors and juniors in high school, wow, they really are behind where we were before or do you think it's going to be made up?
I think that we definitely lost time. I think that what we're trying to do as a district is really get that data and see where we need to make it up, and then over time try to make it up. I think it's yet to be seen where we are when they are seniors. And listen, again, the academics are important. I think that will come. You know, it's just the child's ability to be able to learn things that they would have learned earlier. It's not necessarily play catch up, but try to take them from where they were and get them to where we feel they need to be.
Yeah.
I think the bigger part of it is, again, school's important, academics are important, but I think when you have a job and you're out in the real world, it's how you interact with people and having those social skills, which is a big part of it. I could come in here and act like I know everything, but if I don't know how to interact with people, I don't think many people would hire me for a job.
Sure. The social part of it's really important. And it's difficult, you know. And I think that it was just such an interrupted year, and it's just it's interesting.
Well, even for the kids, the families, my educators.
Sure.
It's
and I'm sure like we have doing the police work.
Yep.
I mean, you have a range of people that are their technology skills. So I'm sure you have the same, where you have the teachers that are great with technology, and the ones that honestly are challenged by some of it. I mean, you're probably a little bit better than police.
Yes.
But in general,
I do okay. But even I had to learn. But I have to say this: talking about the pandemic and my faculty and staff. What I saw them do under the most difficult of circumstances was incredible. They did step up, and it was challenging to them. And they kept their heads up. They did what they had to do, and they always put children first. And I thank them for that. They have always been child-centered here, but they really, really had to teach under very, very difficult circumstances. If you look at having to teach in a classroom with the kids present, and then we had kids on remote, you almost had to split yourself in half. And the remote's a little different. You don't have that interaction with the adult, and the kids are sitting home, and homes have different dynamics.
Of course.
So that's difficult as well. But my faculty and staff, given the circumstances, did an incredible job. And when we came back right after the pandemic, literally myself, my assistant principal, Julia, with the guidance of certainly the central administration and the Board of Ed, we had to recreate how this building ran, from even just how classes were scheduled, lunch, recess, everything that we not took advantage of, but everything that we normally did to prepare for the next year, we had it start from square one with anything that related to how this building functioned. So to be able to do that, and it really was a team effort, I thank my faculty and staff, the central administration, the superintendent, the Board of Ed. We had great leadership here. We got through it, but also without the faculty's hard work, the kids and this community, we would have never gotten through it. I don't think you could throw, knock on wood, I don't think you could throw anything at us, anything else at us, that we wouldn't be able to handle after this pandemic.
You know what's interesting too, I think is, and this makes it harder, and I would see it too, is people approached and dealt with the pandemic in so many different ways. So you're set up for this situation, but then you still have that parent, because they might have some immune compromised people at home and all kinds of other issues that aren't comfortable, and you have to accommodate them too and try to make them a part. You know what I mean? Like there's so many where you never really had to worry about that kind of stuff. You set up the classroom, the kids are going to go in the classroom, and now all of a sudden we have all these little individual issues that we really, not that we didn't worry about individual issues, but we now really have to take them into account.
No, absolutely. And look, as a parent, and this did magnify it with the pandemic. You want to know your child's safe. Now, dealing with COVID, if your child is immunosuppressed, now you're sending them to school. Do you feel comfortable? Can they come? Can they not come? Those are decisions that had to be made.
Right.
But it was difficult, and it was a difficult time. But we're up to any challenge. The people in this building, like I said, they're excellent educators. I had never worked with a better group, and I've worked with great groups throughout my career. There's nothing you could throw at them that they can't handle. And I will tell you that I would, and this is the standard whenever I place children, I would be fine with any of my three being in any of these teachers' classrooms. They are excellent educators, and they're always child first.
So, all right, what would you do if you had to do it again, or even sitting around thinking about it over a glass of wine? What other occupation do you think you would have liked to have tried if you could do it again? Or
well, I don't know if I would have had a choice in this matter, but I really, really wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. But that
I was going to say, did you want to be Mickey Mantle, right?
That didn't work out too well. But, you know, when I went to college, I was a political science major. Also, you know, took a lot of history courses, and I wanted to be an attorney. And I think even I remember dating my wife, and you know, I don't know what I want to do, and I still even go through. You know, I'm not sure. And I think I wanted to kind of maybe go the route of going to law school and become an attorney. And looking back, you know, maybe that's something I could have put more effort into doing, but I just...
Not a regret, but something...
It's not a regret, but that's something I was interested in doing.
Right. All right, so what's your best memory of your time here in Otisville?
I have a lot of good memories.
I know, it's hard to pick one.
Well, and it's tough because there's so many great things about the building. You know, and this being my last year, I really made it a point to get around into the classrooms and see what's going on and see the kids. It's funny because when I walk into the lunchroom, particularly kindergarten, and I never had this happen in any of my years here, and I try to get around and get to know the kids. It's not just about kids coming into my office if they're in trouble.
Right.
But I walk into the lunchroom, and the kindergartners, Mr. Biele, it's like I'm a celebrity, you know, celebrity principal. It's almost like they know I'm retiring.
Oh, really?
Which chokes me out because I feel bad because, you know what, I was the principal when they came in for kindergarten. I will come back and see them graduate. But, you know, I've had many kids go through this building, and, you know, I'm, as a principal, proud to see them progress through here and learn and grow. So that's the difficult part for me. But
what's one piece of advice you'd give to somebody starting out? Like, what advice would you give your daughter or somebody, you know, when she's a teacher, you said? So what's that one thing that you would give them that they could take with them?
So my first advice to my daughter was make sure you know, get to work on time.
Yeah, drives you crazy,
exactly,
right? When
right?
people are late.
She works hard, and I think that's innate. You should, as an educator, in any job,
right?
Police officer, educator, you should work hard. But my first piece of advice to her was, you're always, you know, what you learn in college, it's almost like what they tell us, you know, what you learn, hey kid, what you learn in the academy,
right?
Now we're out, you know, in the real world.
Forget about
all that stuff.
Right.
And a lot of that is helpful, you know, what they learn from teaching or, you know, doing lesson plans and things like that. But really my advice to her was get to know your children, get to know who they are, and do everything you can to certainly teach them and support them. And the same thing as what I said before. It's not just about the academics. She's a fourth grade teacher, and she has a wonderful class. But get to know those kids.
Is she in this district?
No, she's up in Cherry Valley.
Okay.
So get to know the kids, do everything you can, work hard. Teach to all of them. You know, they all have different abilities. They you know, some know more than others, whatever it may be. Teach to all of them. Be there for them, because it's not just the academics. Especially, particularly fourth graders are going to have issues come up.
Sure.
And the parents are your partners. And certainly as a new teacher, make sure you work well with your colleagues. And for those colleagues, like our Karen Crogsland, they're full of knowledge.
Yeah.
You know, make sure that you talk with your colleagues, ask them for advice, or if your principal talks to you and gives you advice, make sure you do it. But the bottom line is, of course, safety, but do everything you can and, you know, be there for those kids.
What's one lesson that that has taught you that that you've learned that you think everybody should learn? If that makes sense. Like, what is something that, you know, that something this job has taught you that you think everyone should learn, you know, at some point in their life moving forward? Like, is there one simple thing here, not really advice, but a lesson that you'll learn?
Yes.
Kind of.
I think that, you know, I've learned a lot, and I always try to. I'm a lifelong learner, even as a police officer. I learned quite a lot, you know, having that experience interacting with people, and this as well. I think that as things have changed over the years, that one thing that, you know, I hope to, that I've learned is that, you know, always try, and I do, you know, even as police, you look at both sides, but always try to have all the information before you jump to a conclusion. Mm-hmm. And if you're wrong, admit it. And you know what? People make mistakes. Forgive them. Have forgiveness. You know, and I think that's difficult because there's so many strong feelings about things, even out in society, that, you know, we just have to learn how to better treat each other and forgive each other and respect people's opinions.
I think you gotta say you're sorry when you mess
Absolutely,
up.
absolutely.
You know, I read an article once that they said, you know, doctors, you know, like they found that doctors that have acknowledged and said they're sorry are more likely not to get sued than doctors that dig their heels in, right? Because people, you know, and I worked, you know, Matt Byrne was my boss in Middletown, worked for him for years, and that's what he would say. Hey, if you're wrong, just apologize.
That's it.
Because that's all people really sometimes want, acknowledgement that you were wrong and you made a mistake, you know, and
you're human.
Right.
You've made a mistake, and I think that, you know, I think the honesty and integrity, not something I learned, I always try to be, have that honesty and integrity, but people do appreciate that honesty, and they appreciate when you're wrong and you admit you're wrong, so, you know, that's absolutely been a big part of it.
And you see it, like I as listeners and people that watch us know that I referee, and they'll say, hey, if you mess a call up, if you miss a call, say to the coach, hey, sorry, coach, I missed it. Now, you can't do that 50 times during the game. Or
sorry, coach. Sorry, coach.
Right.
Sorry, coach.
But, you know, every so often, and you talk to coaches, and they respect that. Because they're like, they know, hey, my players are not perfect. I'm not perfect. You're not perfect. Again, you know, you can't have a million errors, but people just want to know that you're so, you know, hey, I messed that up. You know, I think that's great advice.
And I think that you know, again, nobody's perfect, and you know, we're all learning, and we're going to make mistakes. I think, you know, that's how kids learn, and that's how adults learn. You know, we learn, and to me, I'll learn until that time comes.
So, how many superintendents did you work for here? So you worked for obviously Brian, who's here now.
Marty Murray, and Jack Latini.
And so Murray was here when you were hired, right? Because she was before Jack.
Yes, she was actually when I had kind of two levels when I interviewed.
Okay.
One was with, it's funny, we were just talking about this at the retirement party. I walked into a room similar to this, but in the old building, and there was a whole line of people sitting there, and I'm like,
oh my God.
And listen, I only interviewed as a teacher, so usually it was like a principal, or assistant principal, or a couple of people, and I'm like, there's a whole line of people. I'm like, okay. And they're like, okay, hot seat's right there, have a seat. And then I just got peppered with questions.
Wow, who are these people? The search committee?
Well, yeah, it was the principal. They didn't have an assistant principal at the time, but you had different teachers and, aides and just representative of the building.
That's funny.
And, you know, I will tell you, though, and this speaks to really what this building is. As many people as there was, when each person asked me a question during that interview, I felt like I got to know that building and how special it was, and I'm like, you figure you're anxious and you feel like you're kind of under pressure to answer the questions, but as each question got asked to me, I felt more and more comfortable. Like, hey, you know what?
That's
I feel like this is a great place.
Good. That's interesting. All right, so 3 books that you'd recommend.
Okay, so I thought about this, and I do read, and I've read books a long time ago. So, if it's okay, I'll give you more of the genre or the...
Go ahead.
Because I read specific books, but I also try to read in certain areas. So I would definitely say, and this is one thing I want to do when I move on in retirement, because I need to do a better job at it, because quite honestly, you see a lot of cupcakes and candy here, and it's hard for me.
Out a little bit?
Yeah, it's very hard for me to, say no with that stuff. So, I have tried to, as much as I can work out in the past. So really anything to do with like health and fitness and eating better, and I will try to eat better. I'll watch this and say, okay, I did say it to everybody, I will try to eat better. But anything along those lines. I think, also, look, I always try to be a better person, and I think anything that's kind of wrapped around character, that's what I try to preach as a principal. But I've also tried to preach as a parent. I want my children to be respectful to everybody and my children to be good citizens, and make sure that, when somebody's down, you're not stepping over them, you're picking them up.
Sure.
So I think anything to do with character or centered around that. And the last one, which I've always been interested in, is any type of any type of historical books. Maybe really centered around World War II. I've always been a World War II buff. But even historical fiction, anything where we know it didn't happen, or if it's something that happened based on history, but it's fictional. I find that interesting as well. So those are really my three areas where if I'm reading something, I try to center
Now,
on.
do you Kindle or a real library book or a real book?
So I'm still kind of old school. If we go on vacation somewhere, it's kind of easier to do like a Kindle or an iPad. But I still kind of like reading the book.
I am too. It's just something about having a book in my hand.
Yep. Yeah, as opposed to and sometimes look, if you're sitting somewhere you can't see the screen.
Right.
It's
Sure.
I'm still kind of old school.
Yeah.
But I think those are probably the three most important things. Besides, that's the reading part. But of course, going back to retirement, my family. And having that family time. So
So what's the next chapter look like?
That's a great question.
You're not going to know, I guess, right? Until you're in it.
I mean, I definitely will stick with my other job, doing what I'm doing with my other job. I've been there over 20 years, and I still enjoy doing that. I think that, both jobs are very similar in a sense, but, that still gives me the ability to interact with people and help people. I mean, that's what law enforcement's about. If any acting interim comes along, I'd like to do that. If there's districts that need an administrator.
Oh, there you go. To do like an interim short term.
www.vinnybiele.com.
There you go.
I can throw that out.
Sure, you got it.
I'd like to try to do that and just see what else comes along. I think that.
So Florida, sitting around doing nothing isn't time yet for you?
No, I think that.
Too soon.
I think I'm young. I don't know how people perceive me as whether I'm younger. I feel like I still have a lot ahead of me. I feel like certainly family is my number one priority, and spending time with my family. I'll see where my kids end up, my grandkids. I don't want to be far away from them. I'll see, what happens with them before we consider moving, so I'll be in the area for a while. And I'll see what else comes along. I think that, I'm looking forward to spending time with my wife, who can't wait for me to be home all day. and really, I've always been a worker. I'll still work. I still enjoy doing it, and I'll do it as long as I can and just kind of go from there. But, to me, I can kind of, instead of following the calendar, I can make the calendar.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yes.
All right, well, on that note, let's end it. So I just want to thank you for all your help over the years. You've been really great to work with, and our communication interaction's been awesome. And I brag about it all the time, and I think that's really because of you and how you approach things. So I want to thank you, and I hope you enjoy your retirement.
I look forward to it, and Chief, I thank you. I agree. We've had a great working relationship. I know that, with you and your department, you guys have done a great job. The SROs, we feel very safe with you guys. You guys have been great partners to us, and I greatly appreciate your partnership with us and all the hard work that you and your officers have done to work really as great partners and keeping us safe. You guys do an absolutely incredible job, and I thank you guys for that.
Well, thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for the June 2022 edition of Coffee with the Chief, and we'll see you again next month.